Good night. Here, everyone. Johnson, night. God is good, and God is good all the time. My name is Erminia Spirit Divine. I'm here to give you a word on tonight, and the topic gonna be a promise, a ruler from Bethlehem will come for Israel. And so God had promised that there will be a ruler is coming to rule over Israel. Now He will care for them, and He will give them peace and security. He gonna be the best ruler Israel ever had. Cause Israel had no good leaders besides David and Samson. So and the ruler gonna be that's Jesus. You know, Hanukkah the one gonna predict the whole dream that he's coming. So this is a promise to David, a covenant with God. So God had promised David. Um, 'Cause God has spoken this here multiple times in the Old Testament. He spoke to David and made a covenant with him and told him a ruler is coming. You know, and so he had told and he spoke to Abraham. Back then. He spoke to Abraham because of how they was living in the Old Testament. That's why he had to come up with something to stop them from killing the sheep every time they sin and all that kind of stuff. So God had came up with something to um to save the world from sin. So he told his son to sacrifice himself for all our sins. It was the old living in the Old Testament. So God's sprinkled promise of the coming Messiah. Now God scattered hope as He turned to the Redeemer of Israel. So this story is about God's promise, a ruler will be over Israel. That He made this promise to David. The old way that was living in the Old Testament. Now God wanted to change it so this ruler will do sacrifice himself. So this story will be coming from Malachi chapter 5, verse 1 through 5. So marshal your troops, one, O city, or truth, for a siege is laid against us. So Malachi he predict the end of the king. So he talking about the end of the king. When Jesus had got beaten and they struck him in the face, they did all kinds of stuff. So he predict the end part before the beginning. And sometimes that's how God right. God right finish the end part before He finished the beginning. So Monica predict the end of the king. But at this time he's talking about the king who they have now, King Zechariah. So he is the king now, and David is a bloodline of Jesus. So he also, is next king in line. So David wasn't a king until Saul depart. So now gather yourself in truth, O daughter of truth. So so they will strike Israel ruler on the cheek with a rod. So this still Malachi predicting his dream of this ruler. He not just the end part. He predicted the end part of the ruler. He said the ruler would be he he will be ruled over the chick with a rod. And now this happened to the king. So the same thing he predicted, it happened to the king that they have now. But that will happen to Jesus at the end. But the same thing he predicted happened to the king that they have now. Not too. But you, Bethlehem, though you are small among the chains of Judah. Now, now he prophesies Bethlehem, and that's what Jesus' birthplace is going to be at. So he is a coming king that who was saved. So he predicting all this here. And so Bethlehem is a small town. That's why he said they are small among the chains of Judah because Bethlehem is a small town. So out of you will come for me one who will be a ruler over Israel who are old from ancient time. So now Monica predicting that Jesus would come to live as a man in the flesh, had been alive forever from the old and from the ancients of the time. Because Jesus, you remember John the Baptist, he kind of confused us at first. That's why everybody thought he was a Messiah, because he was born before Jesus. But he kept on saying, Jesus, he was here before me. So everybody was kind of confused because everybody was like, you is here already. You born. Jesus had never got there. He kept saying Jesus was before him. But what he was saying, like he's saying here, from the old instant of time. I mean, Jesus was here already and came down and in the flesh, to perceive his purpose. So Jesus entered in a human, for history as a man of Jesus. So he came down as a human with in the flesh, to perceive his purpose. He was a seed that God dropped down. So he had multiple purposes that he had to complete. So three. Therefore, Israel will be abandoned for a little while, until she is in labor with birth. Now, what he mean is Israel will have to fight their own enemy until the birth upon a time of deliverance. Now, Mary was in labor. I mean, said Mary was pregnant. You know, so I mean they have no. The ruler is coming. But then they still, after she had the baby, they still have to wait because he gonna be just a baby. They got to wait till he get grown and everything else to be ruled. And that time they have to fight their own enemy. That's why God said the Israel will be abandoned until the time when she who is in labor give birth. Until Mary give birth and Jesus get grown enough to be the king, the Israel have to fight their own enemies. And no telling how long, because see, when she have birth, he still gotta wait till Jesus get grown. So they have to fight their own enemies. So that's what that mean right there. So three. And the rest of his brothers returned and joined the Israelite. You know, so Mary had other children after Jesus. So Monica predict all that, and Jesus not even here yet. He prophesied all that. He said he will have um brothers. He have other brothers that gonna be with John with the Israelite, and Mary did had more children after Jesus. So he prophesied everything. Everything was on point. So four, he will stand and shepherd his flocks in the strength of the law, his God. So in the name of the law, his God, and they will live security, for then his greatness will reach to the end of the earth. So he's talking about Jesus. Jesus is the shepherd. He is a shepherd. He will be over the Israelite, which is his sheep. Who is the sheep. Now he will care. He said he gonna care for them. Now he predict all this. That Jesus is a loving person that is in peace. He said this ruler will care for them, will secure them, will give them strength in the Lord, and they will have peace. You know, and Jesus will be that peace because Jesus is peace, and He said they will have peace. So they're gonna be the best rulers that Israel ever had. So Mordecai also prophesies seven shepherd and eight leaders. So these is good leaders. Will help Christ. They will help Jesus defeat all evil on earth. And they're talking about Jesus' disciples, Jesus 12 disciples. They had was walking with Jesus on his journey the whole time. Helping Jesus out. And Jesus also started sending them out to cast out demons and heal people and everything. So that's who they was talking about. He prophesied seven shepherds and eight leaders. Now we know Jesus had 12 disciples. and the 12 disciples were with him the whole journey, and they helped him out, so Jesus greatness will reach all over the earth, all over the world, and they will live security and with peace. Jesus is peace. And Jesus will be he was a great leader, you know. So Jesus is coming and has came. Jesus is coming, and to them, Jesus is coming, but he has came and fulfill his purpose and save. And and he was history. So now Monica, he predict this ruler. He predict this ruler. Now God talk about this here multiple times. I done heard him talking to Abraham, and he also spoke of this to David. Now he made a covenant to him with David. He told David, I'm about to send a ruler, because of the Old Testament. The way they were living in the Old Testament, that would make him came up with this idea, because they was sent, and then they had to cut the sheep and all this kind of stuff, and he was like, well, I'm about to send a ruler, to change all that, someone who gonna sacrifice it to cancel all this kind of living that y'all doing in this Old Testament, so the ruler came. He came in the flesh, and he was a great leader. He was a great leader on earth. And he did got beaten at the end. Remember, Mordecai had predict him at the end, all the things that was going to happen to him. So one we have, now we see that mankind had predict that the ruler is coming to rule over Israel. He will be their shepherd. So too, now this is a promise, that God had made with David. He also made a covenant with David, and he said that he will bring a ruler, due to the living that was in the Old Testament. And also they will come. He also will be the leader over Israel, and he also will save the world and be the light of the world. So three, he will come from Bethlehem. And he also predicted that, So he prophesied. He was good prophesied, and he prophesied everything that came was on point. Everything came to pass. So Jesus' birthplace is from Bethlehem. And his birth mother was the Virgin of Mary. You know, and Bethlehem means the house of bread. That's what that means. And folk, God said Israel will be abandoned for a little while, because Mary was in labor. And even though when she do have the baby, still Jesus had to get grown to be the leader for Israel. In the meantime, the Israelites had to fight their own battles. They had to fight their own enemies. Until deliverance, a permanent of a deliverance time. So five, Jesus will be their shepherd to Israel. Now he will care for them, and they will feel secure, and they will have peace. And Israel never had that in a while. The kind of kings they had. Now I think David was a good king, and since he was protecting them, so he pretty much had a fruit of good kings, but a lot of them wasn't good. They were turning against the Israelite and oppressed them. So Jesus gonna come along, and he gonna be a good ruler. He gonna be great on this earth. He was great on this earth, and he was the light of the world. He saved all of us from sin. So he had multiple purposes when he came down here. On six, he will be great on earth, and he did fulfill his mission, and he did make history of the world from generation to generation. And also he is coming again. Jesus is coming again. And this will be the second time around. So Jesus was here. That's what John the Baptist was saying. He was here already, and they said up here too, in the old instance, that he was here. But he came down in the flesh. So that's what John, because he confused everyone, because everybody really thought John was Jesus, because that's all he kept saying, that he came before me, And everybody was like, no, you was born before Jesus. You were born before Jesus even was here. But we couldn't get it. We couldn't. I couldn't get it at time. I'm like, well, what is she talking about? Jesus born after him, But in the old incense time, Jesus was here already, but he had to come down in the flesh to perceive his purpose. So John later on, what I read that John saw the Spirit came down to earth, which she said was Jesus. So that's why he knew a little something about it, and he kept on saying Jesus was here. He was here already. He confused everyone. They didn't want to crucify John because they thought John was on Jesus. Because we kept on trying to figure out what is you talking about. You was born first. You know, when your mama had you, Mary was still pregnant with Jesus. So we was confused trying to figure out what John was talking about. But Jesus, he was here in the old incense, and he came down to be the ruler. He came down to spread that seed all over, and he also came down to save us from our sin, and he was a good ruler. He had peace in Israel, fit to secure, and that was the best ruler they ever had. And Monica, he predict everything right on point. Everything was fulfilled, with everything that he had spoke on, that he prophesied, it all came to pass. So there was a story that Monica had prophesied, for that God had given him that vision that he was sending a ruler to Israel, the Israelite, and that he will be a great ruler. He will give them peace and security. That they ain't have to be worrying and had to keep on calling on God, because he had a supernatural right there with him. So there was secure, they had peace and everything else. So that's all the word I have for you on today. And y'all have a blessed night, and I'll see y'all on the next video.